Hey, so I'm going to talk about some things which I've sort of been thinking about, but not really in great depth. But I know I'm going to say it's quite a controversial subject 'cause it's partly to do with religion, partly to do with God, partly to do with God's nature. That's if God does exist, and if God does exist, how exactly does he exist? Is it in the way that we conceive him, or does he exist in and of himself? And we can't know necessarily what that is because we can't know the external world because we perceive it through our own phenomenological filter. So presumably we experience God through this too, depending on what God actually is, and I don't know. But let's just assume that God does exist. Okay. Which I don't know if he does. Like, part of me, I sort of sway on this question. Sometimes I think, yeah, he does. Sometimes I think, no, he doesn't. And these are almost definitive in the moment feelings or thoughts, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. But I'm just wondering, so hypothetically, if God does exist, what is he like? Is he like a forgiving God, like one portrayed by the New Testament, and which is embodied by Jesus Christ, where God loves people and he doesn't punish every sin they've committed and send them to an eternal fiery hell. Rather, people are able to repent and change the actions that they've taken in the past and become good people. Or do our actions get written on our conscience forever, and we basically we're determined by that? And see, I don't know, because like I feel like there are some actions which are maybe irreconcilable. I think that's the right word, unreconcilable. But can we outweigh those bad actions with better actions, with good actions and good intentions, in the present and extending out in the future? And if we don't intentionally commit any more bad acts, then hypothetically, if God does exist, would he forgive us? Or would he, I don't know, judge us in a different sort of way? Because I think there was a story. Well, it wasn't a story. It's more like a real life case of a man who was in a gang. I think he was called John Cannon Young, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but it was oh no, it's called Nicky Cruz, and he was in a gang, and I think he murdered people. He used to take and sell drugs and do a lot of crappy things, and he ended up having a religious experience, and I think he converted to Christianity, and he lived the rest of his life like I guess like an ascetic. So he didn't indulge in hedonistic activities like he did in the past. So would this man go to heaven, or would he be punished for the extent to which his actions affected other people in the past? And I don't know. See, I think with the attributes of God, we like to say that he's omnibenevolent, or maybe not like to say that, but this is just what people would generally say in a Christian context, that God is omnibenevolent, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. So these mean that he is omnipresent means that he's always there, he's all around us. Omnipotent means he's all powerful. Omniscient means he's all knowing. And omnibenevolent means he's all loving. So if God is all loving, then surely that would also mean that he is forgiving. But forgiving in the right context, in that people actually have to change. Now, some scholastics, I'll call them, which is like people who mix or merge faith and philosophy, believe that if we commit bad acts on planet Earth and these extensively outweigh the good acts we've committed or partaken in, then we do still have a chance to be able to achieve salvation. It just happens after death in a form of purgatory, and they don't think that hell actually exists. And I think one of the philosophers who believes this is John Hick, I believe, and I think Keith Ward also believes this. And I'm not sure about what's he called? I've forgotten his name. I haven't studied this for a while. Karl Barth. I'm not sure whether he thinks that as well, but that's what some philosophers do think. Okay, so that would be compatible with God's omnibenevolence. So it does make sense to say that no matter what you've done in your life, it's never bad enough so that you deserve an eternity of suffering in hell. And if God is omnipotent, then he has to almost merge this with his omnibenevolence and use his power in a positive way as opposed to in a tyrannical way. So he does. So that means he has the power to send us to heaven or send us to hell, but because he's omnibenevolent, supposedly, if these places do exist in the afterlife, then he would send us to heaven. And if he's omniscient, then this is all-knowing, so he knows what our motives are for doing things. He knows our intentions, and he knows the acts that we actually commit in themselves as well. So I don't think he would be lacking in knowledge about those sorts of things. So he does have the correct information in order to be able to judge accordingly. So it wouldn't be like he was misinformed, like he was only told about the bad acts we did or only told about the good acts we did, and he made a mistake in where to send us in the afterlife, I guess. That doesn't sound very omniscient to me if he did make a mistake. Then again, Boethius said that God knows everything, but he knows everything in a different way to how we know things on earth, because we know things from the confines of our own human experience. So, for example, we perceive time as past, present and future as if we're going through it. The past has already occurred, the future is yet to occur, and the present is the moment that we're in right now. Whereas Boethius thinks that God just sees a simultaneous now. And if he does see a simultaneous now, does that mean he sees a simultaneous now of everything that's happened on Earth in the past, present and future, everything that happened before the universe was created, and everything that's ever going to happen, including Judgment Day, if that's ever actually going to come? Does God see all of that, or does he just see the lives that we're living? And I think it would probably make more sense to conclude the former, because, well, that to know more is greater than to know less, debatably anyway. In the omni sense anyway, because obviously if you're all knowing, then you're knowing all, so God presumably knows all. But then again, how do we know that these are actually God's attributes? Because these could just be positive attributes from our own phenomenological perspectives, because we can't actually maybe understand what is good, because maybe we could link to Descartes' argument about the evil demon. I don't think he actually believed this, but we do have to take into account this sort of like this idea that it wasn't actually God who created the universe, rather it was an evil demon who imprinted us with a corrupted version of the Logos, and we are determined or destined to perceive the world in an incorrect manner, because this evil demon has just created this world around us and created this being which is incapable of actually seeing truth and is only able to perceive lies. And if that's the case, and say that there is some sort of God coexisting alongside it, then how could we possibly know the attributes of God? Because we're going to be wrong about it. However, I don't think I believe that argument. I don't, because if there was an evil demon who created the universe, then there wouldn't be a god in the way we know him anyway, because a god wouldn't actually allow an evil demon to create the universe, supposedly. However, God did somehow allow a serpent into the Garden of Eden, which was supposedly a garden of perfection. However, I think those stories are more symbolic than anything, so maybe they don't actually represent anything that we can really understand in the material sense. So I don't think it was necessarily the case that there was actually a garden with two people in it, and a snake came and then they ate the fruit, and then obviously the fall occurred. I don't think that happened literally. I think it was a symbolic representation of maybe a descent into chaos, or maybe even growing up, which is sort of the thing that I gravitate towards when I read that story and when I've studied the story in the past. So there's that, but so maybe, well, let's say there was an evil demon who created the universe and made us perceive things falsely, then presumably the evil demon also caused us to perceive there to be an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God who created the world, which is actually the demon. So maybe the demon is trying to make us perceive the world or perceive him in this sort of way, which would make sense because you associate manipulation with demons. I'm not necessarily talking about this in the literal sense, and I don't actually believe it. It's just I'm trying to figure it out in a symbolic sort of way, and using references of which I've looked briefly at or extensively at in the past. So you don't actually have to think that I believe that there is an evil demon who has created the universe. Might be. I don't think there is, but yeah. So maybe that is the case, but I don't think it is. I've just got a text. It's probably my boss. See, I don't know how God does exist in. I mean, I know God exists in some ways, because existence is quite a ambiguous term, I guess, because you can say that Mickey Mouse exists, or you can say that SpongeBob exists, or you can say that a ball exists, but SpongeBob exists differently to how a ball exists, because a ball is like a tangible thing, whereas SpongeBob's more like a concept which has been created. It's like a piece of artwork, so it doesn't exist. We wouldn't say that SpongeBob is real, but then you can't necessarily say that SpongeBob isn't real at the same time, but it does depend on how you define the words. So is God just like a character in a story? Is he like the ultimate character in a story, or is he just fake? Or does he actually exist? And that's a thing, because see when I talk about this, I just think, well, is God just an archetype, like an ultimate archetype of man, I guess, like because if you have omnibenevolence, omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence, it's like all the positive attributes which are working or coinciding with one another in order to make this perfect being. So maybe that's just our way of understanding morality in some sense. We've almost extracted out the moral values of which are desirable in people, I'll say. Don't necessarily, I won't say men, because I think that is a little bit obsolete, but all of these moral values which are desirable in people, and we've attributed them to this single being who has all of these attributes, because we can say omnipotence by itself isn't good, because then you're just tyrannical. If you're just powerful without being loving also, then you can very easily use your power in wrong ways, in false ways. So I guess translating this into reality, if you just have a tyrannical leader, then that system is almost going to collapse. And I remember Jordan Peterson talking about this with I think it's chimpanzees or apes, when they have a tyrannical hierarchy, it's not stable, because when the tyrannical leader is, say, sick, or when he's tired, then the other apes all gang up on him and rip him to pieces. So that sort of system doesn't work. You want a leader who's powerful, but who's also loving and can empathise with the people that he's trying to lead. So maybe that's something that's also captured within the idea of God. And I'm not saying that God does actually exist, but I'm just saying that the abstracted ideal of morality is embedded within the idea of God. And it is clear that you do need omnibenevolence alongside omnipotence in order to make omnipotence good. And you could say the same vice versa, because let's flip it round. So you've got an omnibenevolent leader who isn't powerful and who isn't necessarily even a good leader. All they want to do is empathise with people and be good. And not necessarily be good, that's not the right word to use, because that's assuming that only empathy is good, whereas we need to have more of a golden mean somewhere between, to use an Aristotelian term. So, being overly loving isn't necessarily good, because that might lead to overprotection, and that might lead to the risk for exploitation in the real adult world. Because if you only show a child love and you never actually tell them what to do, then that's probably going to create a narcissistic child, or an extremely insecure child who feels like they have to be constantly validated by other people because they don't understand the word no, because all you've done is love them and not shown any sort of power towards them, or demonstrated any sort of hierarchy. You treat them as your equal, and that's clearly not good. You do need to have that degree of power, but that also needs to be balanced out by love. So I think that does support the idea that God is the abstracted ideal of morality again, and you can use this for pretty much all of his attributes. So an omnipresent God is a God that's always there. But what's the good in someone who's been always there but never actually doing anything good? Like, for example, being loving, or reasonably powerful, or anything like that. What's the good in him just being there? Like, that bowl is sat over there and it's not in use, and it's no good to me right now. It's just there. It's not omnipresent, but it's present, and it's not necessarily helping me with anything. It helped me have my tea earlier, but it's not serving me any purpose. So what good's a present? What good is an omnipresent God with no other attributes? And I don't see that as being good at all. So I don't think you necessarily exclude any of God's attributes and say that this is what makes God God. I think it's all of the different attributes put together, and I think that these attributes are just extracted outside of the human moral experience and then inflated to a greater degree, and makes God the ultimate archetype of morality. And that's sort of what the message behind Christianity is. And that's it's become, I think Christianity in the New Testament is like a refined version of God. So it's like, so the Bible's almost like a story of which we were trying to figure out morality, and then in the New Testament, that's when God becomes, I guess, much more loving and forgiving. But I guess he's also judgmental too in some ways, because, I don't know, because, well, was Jesus judgmental? Jesus did judge people, I'd say, because, well, he judged people based on their intentions, based on their inner motives, and based on their actions. So I'm trying to think of a story of how this happens. I guess you could say that Jesus, I can't remember which way around this goes, but there was the story, I don't know whether it was a story or an account of what happened, but there was a story in the Bible, in the New Testament, about Martha and Mary. So you could say that, the names, again, will probably be the wrong way around, but you could say that Jesus judged Martha for assuming that her sister should be in the kitchen cooking, instead of listening to Jesus' teaching, because supposedly women weren't supposed to teach at the time. And this is a form of judgment on Jesus' part. He's both judging Martha, but he's also judging, or Mary, but he's also judging the status quo at the time, because that that suggested that women should be in a certain position in society, and he was like, well, actually, is this right? So that is a form of judgment. So I don't really know where I'm going with this, but if you say that Jesus was like an embodiment of God in some ways, like an ideal, archetypal, tangible man, then you can also conclude that God is also judging, but Jesus also seemed loving as well based on biblical accounts. I feel like I need to study the Bible more in order to be able to talk about this confidently, but yeah. So, anyway, this is like 20 minutes long, so I'm going to cut it off here. So I talked a little bit about God's attributes and I actually start off with whether or not bad people can go to heaven. You can derive from that what you want. So that's the end of the video anyway, and that's all I really want to talk about for now. Okay, thank you for watching.